Dnipropetrovsk, March 1989. Around 3 in the afternoon, when most of the apartment building's residents were at work, pensioner Raissa Litko was returning from a walk with her dog. She saw the body of her neighbor, Alina Feofanova, a restorer at the local art museum. The body was propped against the wall, and the clothing around the stomach was soaked with blood. The terrified neighbor began screaming and calling for help. When the detectives arrived at the scene, Raissa told them she had been walking her dog for about 20 minutes, and when she left the building, the body wasn't there. After leaving the entrance, she immediately turned around the corner of the building, so she didn't see anyone entering or leaving. Raissa had called the victim's husband and asked him to come urgently. She couldn't tell him about his wife's death. However, from her frightened voice, he surely understood that something bad had happened. The medical examiner confirmed the death was recent. The woman had been killed with a knife, and the murder weapon was not at the scene. Next to the body was a suitcase and a bag containing a plane ticket from Dnipropetrovsk to Kiev for that day. Her passport, keys, and wallet were still there. As the detectives examined the scene, the victim's husband, Igor, arrived. They didn't let him approach the body. Instead, they led him into the apartment for a conversation. There, the detective noticed a smudged stain on the floor. The forensic specialist determined it was blood. There was also blood on a fur pom-pom lying nearby. Igor claimed his wife didn't have such a pom-pom on her clothes. He mentioned he works at a machinery plant as the head of the planning department and left for work as usual at 7:30. His wife was planning to fly to Kiev today to visit her aunt. The forensic specialist found a towel with bloodstains in the trash can. It was likely used to wipe the blood off the floor. There was also a broken flask from a thermos. According to the husband, they had an old blue Chinese thermos with a red rose on it. Maybe the wife wanted to take it on her trip, dropped it and cut herself while picking up the shards. However, they couldn't find the body of the thermos in the apartment. The detective noticed an aquarium. Igor mentioned that Alina had recently become interested in fish. They took his fingerprints and a blood sample. According to the forensic results, the blood on the floor, the towel, and the fur pom-pom didn't belong to the deceased or her husband. This meant someone else had been in the apartment. Someone at her work, at the art museum, could have more information about Alina's social circle. The next day, the detectives went there. In the museum's foyer, the restorer Lidia Gertsanova was discussing the horrifying news with Pyotr Lelika. The man worked in a workshop at the hunting and fishing store, where he made and repaired aquariums. He himself was an avid fish enthusiast. He brought Alina the promised seaweed and learned about the tragedy. Pyotr met Alina at a sports wellness section, where he gave her advice on aquarium maintenance. After taking down all the man's details, the detectives let him go. They started questioning Lydia. The restorer said that she and Alina always had lunch together, where Alina would share her troubles. For the past few months, Alina had been on the verge of divorce. Her husband, Igor, had become infatuated with another woman and planned to leave the family. But Alina decided to fight. She lost weight, changed her hair color and hairstyle, and updated her wardrobe. She became interested in aquarium fish and began attending the sports wellness section. Her efforts were not in vain. Her husband stayed with her. At least that's what Alina told Lydia the last time they had tea together. Alina refused cake, explaining she needed to keep in shape as she had lost 8 kilograms. She was much more confident and proudly confessed to Lydia that she was now unsure if she would forgive and forget her husband's affair. She felt she now had the upper hand and wouldn't give up control. The museum director informed Lydia about her friend's death over the phone. The detectives showed a photo of a pom-pom found in the murdered woman's apartment. Lydia had never seen such an accessory on Alina, but she confidently stated that a coat with such pom-poms was on display at the central department store. She even thought about buying it, but refrained due to her modest salary. Regarding the woman with whom Igor had an affair, Lydia knew only that she was younger than Alina and worked in the central department store shoe department. The very department store where she saw the coat with those pom-poms. The detectives managed to find out the name and address of the husband's mistress, Natalia Zaitseva. According to the store manager, she had been on medical leave since the previous day. The detectives waited for the girl near the entrance of her house and immediately noticed scratches on her hand. She explained, saying her cat had scratched her. But she couldn't explain the missing pom-pom on her coat. They detained her. Blood tests and fingerprint analysis yielded a positive result. Natalia Zaitseva had been in the victim's apartment. However, Natalia insisted she did not kill her lover's wife. Yes, she did visit Alina. She asked her to let go of her husband because he was weak-willed, indecisive, and couldn't finalize the divorce. Natalia said that Igor had changed his mind at the last minute. Her friends began to mock her, so she decided to talk to Alina herself. Natalia indeed wore the coat with pom-poms that she recently bought in her department store. She asked Alina not to interfere with them. After all, she had already missed her chance at happiness with her husband. She said that Igor had even proposed to her, but she found no understanding from Alina. In response, Alina insulted Natalia and said the conversation was over. The mistress tried to explain that Igor would be with her anyway. Alina struck Natalia across the face and violently pushed her out of the apartment, threatening to kill her. According to Natalia, she came to Alina's around 1:30, an hour and a half before the murder. The story sounded not very convincing, and most importantly, no one could confirm the truthfulness of the girl's words. Desperate, she began to say that even though Igor cheated on Alina, he was extremely jealous of her, and she gave him a reason. Once, Igor didn't want to stay with Natalia overnight. He said that a few days ago in the evening, he saw some bearded man drop Alina off. The look of this guy was menacing. Igor said he doesn't get jealous of his wife, but fears for her life. At that moment, Natalia realized that Igor's love oaths meant little. He began to mention his wife more frequently. He even couldn't resist bringing her up on Natalia's birthday. It seemed like Igor criticized his wife, saying she couldn't cook, and lately had been coming home intoxicated. But the constant comparisons with his wife irritated Natalia. She increasingly felt that Igor loved not her, but his Alina. Detectives did not hide the fact. They suspect Natalia of the murder. She had a serious motive: jealousy, a desire to get rid of a rival, and there's solid evidence of her presence in the victim's apartment. Natalia insisted. At the time of the murder, she was at the dentist's office, and this can be verified. The detective realized it was time for a serious conversation with Igor, the victim's husband. He should have recognized the fur pom-pom from his mistress's coat, which meant he knew who had committed the crime and hid it from the investigation. Igor confirmed he indeed recognized it, but he didn't say because he was sure Natalia couldn't have killed. If he had told the story of their love triangle, the detectives would have simply appointed him and Natalia as the culprits. But they must look for the bearded man who drove Alina home. He was getting her drunk. Igor saw this man only once. He was standing near the entrance. A car pulled up. Alina, apparently drunk, got out, accompanied by an unknown man. Igor confronted Alina with accusations of infidelity. The wife replied that she considered herself free after his affair. Igor started a fight, but the bearded man was stronger. Pinning Igor, he taught him that one can't treat a woman like that. At home, Alina softened her tone. She said she had signed up for a sports wellness section, and this man with a beard was also from there and just offered her a ride. Igor secretly tried to verify her words. He checked the sports sections, but Alina wasn't registered in any of them. By this time, the detective had already been informed. The dentist had confirmed Natalia's alibi. There were other leads to pursue. They needed to identify the mysterious man. The address of the section could probably be provided by the aquariumist who brought seaweed to Alina at work. The detectives went to him. His granddaughter Irina was doing her homework in the workshop next to Pyotr Leleka. He explained that he is a guardian of the child. Her mother died, and her father became an alcoholic. The detective noticed the drawings by the granddaughter. The talkative girl boasted that everyone considers her talented. Alina, who works at the art museum, called her a prodigy and even bought a painting of fish she drew for 5 rubles. Pyotr explained Alina was kind and wanted to support the orphan. She promised to try to get Irina admitted to an art school next year. He knew the bearded man from the section. He's their group's coach, a Georgian named Kaha. Peter Laleka spoke of Kaha as a good person. He said he hadn't noticed any romantic relationships between the coach and Alina. They could talk to Kaha today as they had a scheduled training session. Kaha met the detectives calmly. He indeed once drove Alina home. She said she had sprained her ankle. When they arrived at her house, Kaha realized Alina was using him. She wanted to make her husband jealous. In the next training, he asked her not to do this. The coach had an alibi for the time of the murder. Until 5 in the evening, he taught physical education in a technical school. The coach remembered, not long ago, a new guy joined their group, Lev Kabakov. Kaha felt they knew each other, but they didn't show it for some reason. Once, after a session, Kaha saw them arguing. He remembered the conversation, but didn't understand its essence. Alina demanded to find a certain person and promised 10% for it. Lev demanded 25%. He said Alina should be grateful to him for not exposing her name. The detectives decided to track down Lev Kabakov. In the registration log, the coach found his address. Lev Kabakov was detained at the airport. He had returned from Kiev. By this time, the detectives already knew about his past. He had spent 2 years behind bars for forging paintings. Kabakov revealed he knew Alina from university. They studied at the art academy together. They were supposed to meet in Kiev 3 days ago. She asked to help her sell a Kandinsky painting. He has a few collector acquaintances. But they didn't meet at the airport. Lev boarded the plane, thinking that Alina was already on it, but she wasn't there. To avoid attracting attention, Kabakov flew to Kiev. At the airport, he waited for all the flights from Dnipropetrovsk, hoping that Alina would come on a different flight. She didn't come, and he returned home. Upon learning of the murder, Lev insisted that the crime was committed because of the painting by artist Vasily Kandinsky. Alina bought this painting very cheaply from some old man. She had to restore it. Someone painted watercolor golden fish over Kandinsky's work. The detectives remembered the aquarist's granddaughter, who told how Alina called her a talent and bought a fish painting for 5 rubles. The Kandinsky painting was called Shadow. Created in 1910, it was considered lost. Lev denied any involvement in the murder. He would get a good percentage from the sale. Why kill? Moreover, he had an alibi. Before the flight, he went to a hair salon on Cosmos Square and spent more than an hour there, and the hairdresser would surely confirm it. At the museum, the restorer Lydia showed the detectives a rare catalog published in pre-war Germany and explained that only in this edition is the lost Kandinsky painting called Shadow. In all other editions, it's titled Improvisation Number 19. The detective asked how often the aquariumist Laleka visited Alina. Lydia replied that the man was curious about what was happening behind the museum's exhibition halls. Sometimes he came to watch the restorer's work, was interested in the catalogs, and sometimes even asked about the cost of the paintings. He also browsed through this catalog. Once, Lydia came to Alina for oil and found Pyotr Laleka holding this German catalog. Alina was not in the office. Lydia said Peter shouldn't be here without the owner. Peter replied that he hadn't done anything bad. He was waiting for Alina, brought her a filter for the aquarium. He again started asking questions about the price of the painting. Lydia wanted to get rid of him quickly. She answered tens of thousands to end the conversation. The detectives borrowed the catalog. Lydia had no choice but to agree. However, she noted that she didn't understand the connection of the catalog to the crime. She asked them to return it to the museum as soon as possible. Pyotr Laleka was not found at home. His sister said that Pyotr had left for 3 days. The trip was routine for him. In Kyiv, he buys fittings for aquarium repairs. Granddaughter Ira was shown a reproduction of the painting Shadow. The girl immediately recognized it and explained that she painted fish on it, so the picture wouldn't be so boring. They decided not to wait for Pyotr's return. He was declared wanted. The Kiev law enforcement quickly responded. Pyotr Leleka was found in a hospital with trauma to the base of the skull. The detectives urgently flew to Kiev. They checked the contents of Leleka's bag, a passport and personal items. They also found a body of a blue thermos with a red rose print. They remembered the story of the victim's husband about the old Chinese thermos. The thermos body could have been used to transport the painting. In his hospital room, Leleka immediately began to testify. He had killed Alina because she had deceived and robbed his orphan granddaughter. The girl loved to draw, and he had given her a painting that had uselessly hung on the wall for years. Peter hadn't even suspected that it could be valuable. He had gone to Alina's office to give her an aquarium compressor, approached the easel, lifted the cloth, and saw his painting. Half of the fish were already erased. He noticed an open catalogue on the table. It had a reproduction of the painting that had hung on his wall for over 50 years. He realized that the painting was worth a lot of money. He tried to negotiate with Alina. She wouldn't listen, arguing that he had sold the painting willingly. At a health group session, he heard that Alina had bought a ticket. She was flying to Kiev. While everyone was busy outside, he went into the changing room, got into her bag, and checked the departure time. Leleka hadn't planned to kill her. He had brought the knife to intimidate her. He waited for Alina to leave her apartment and once again asked her to return the painting nicely. He tried to appeal to her conscience, all in vain. She laughed in his face. Rage blinded him, and Peter stabbed her in the stomach. He wiped the knife, opened the bag, and inside was the thermos containing his painting. Pyotr tucked the thermos under his arm and left. Having arrived in Kiev, he found art collectors on Andreevsky Descent Street. They confirmed that it was Kandinsky's work. Leleka sold the painting for 50,000 rubles. 2 thugs were waiting for him when he was returning with the money. He remembered nothing after that. He woke up in a hospital bed. For the murder of Alina Feofanova, Pyotr Leleka was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He did not serve the entire sentence and died of a heart attack. His biological sister took custody of his granddaughter, Ira. The painting is still considered missing.